Why do we feel angry with God when poverty, trauma, loss, or betrayal strike? And how can faith transform our anger into victory?
UPD Podcast starts now.
Hey friends, thank you so much for joining us today on Untrained Philosophical Discussionists. My name is Jonny Hanson. That there's my good buddy, Andy Lamb. And today, we're breaking down reasons for anger with God and the way it manifests. Basically exploring how people feel their anger towards God, including through generational trauma and maybe some conflicting beliefs that people have from youth to adulthood on who God is and how God goes about shaping things and how you go about shaping a relationship with him.
Yeah, I think some of that is just, if you're a follower of Christ, it's just maybe a poor theological understanding of what
Great point.
who God is and how he works into this world.
Sure.
And if you've been taught wrongly about that, then it's easy for you to look at your own life and go, woe is me, and start to blame God. And, you know, why, if we have, and we'll dig into this, but, you know, if God is loving, then how could I be in this situation? And so I'm excited to dig into this. It's going to be a hard conversation because I understand there's a lot of people out there that are going through some real hard stuff. Mm-hmm. And in the midst of all that hard stuff, what I don't want to do, what we don't want to do here is not recognize that in this world you're going to go through hard things, and it's okay for you to be upset, and it's okay for you to have feelings and emotions on that. What we want to do here, I think, through this conversation is try to help maybe bridge a gap of your better understanding of the fact that we do live in a hard world and a fallen, broken world, and that we do have a loving God, and both can exist in the same plane.
Yeah, so I think, viewer and listener, if you've ever had anger towards God, or if you feel there's been an injustice done to you, please comment.
Yeah.
Let us know what that is. We'd love to incorporate that into future episodes. These are always series, and we're checking back constantly. So as you're giving us information, we're able to include your experience in the storytelling here, and we'd love that. So please make a comment to what you've experienced, or maybe somebody you know has experienced, and you can tell us that story. And we always try to honor those when we see them, so please do that.
While you're making that comment, go ahead and like and subscribe and share this with somebody else too.
Please.
That's the best way you can support us.
Your goodwill means everything. If you tell someone to check it out, they're 100 times more likely to listen to it than us just telling them. So please do that as well if you like and support the show. Mm-hmm. What I think we're going to talk about today in our proverb, we kind of talked about some internal factors, our own response to issues of anger, issues of injustice that we've actually participated in manifesting in our life. I think kind of the larger discussion here today in this full conversation is to break down the external factors.
Yeah.
So things like I wrote poverty, childhood trauma, loss, parental loss, familial loss, someone close to you lost, or religious betrayal, meaning like a pastor or maybe someone high up in, someone with authority, let's say, hurts you through the church.
Yeah.
And those are various ways I think that people can turn their anger towards God, these external factors that actually impact them.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think the external ones are the more challenging ones to deal with, because if it's internal, it's easier to put the blame on somebody on something. When I'm wrestling through external factors, the family I was born into, the city or state or country I was born into, the financial level I was born into, whatever it might be, those are things that are out of our control, as you just labeled there. And so it's easier for us to look at those. And we still have some ownership inside of some of those things, but, you know, a good one.
How about this? We can still take action against any of them.
That's a better way of saying it.
We can choose to be victims.
That's the better way of saying it.
And it's not to say that you're not a victim to start. You could potentially be. Things could happen to you. Somebody could do something to you that's terrible and very bad, awful. Mm-hmm. It is how you react to that.
Yeah.
And you might be hurt. You might be hurt for a while, but maybe this is the opportunity for you to hit a new direction on it. Yeah. Maybe your hurt has carried longer than it needs to, and maybe it's time to start reassessing, do I want this to be my identity for the rest of my life, this hurt, or do I want to be a conqueror, and how do I go about finding the victory?
Yeah. I want to start us off, if we can, as we talk about some of the common reasons why people are angry with God. So here's the question that's, why does an all-powerful, all-loving God allow suffering?
Okay.
I think this is one of the greatest questions as I listen to people online, as I listen to people in the church, outside of the church, and we talk about the argument that does God exist. I think this is the number one question people ask is, why does an all-powerful, all-loving God allow suffering? So what I want to position my argument on here is that, so we have free will and we have human choice. So God has given us this. And this goes back to the garden in Genesis chapter 2, verses 16 and 17. God says, you are free to eat from every tree, but you must not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So God gave Adam and Eve, when we look at the story of creation, and we look at Adam and Eve in the garden, he gave them this, you can eat of everything in here, enjoy the creation for what it is. You have one thing you can't do. So then the question people ask is, well, then why does God create the tree in the first place? Like, what it feels like God is just setting humanity up for failure. And so if he's an all-powerful, all-knowing God, he knows that Adam and Eve are going to do this. At the very beginning, he knows that this is going to happen. And so God is God is setting humans up for failure right from the very beginning. Okay. So why did God do that? And so as I have been considering that, so without the possibility of humans choosing God, without the possibility of Adam and Eve choosing obedience, Adam and Eve would have been automated. And so if they're just automated, then there's no meaningful act of love and trust. And so consequently, which that plays out for us today, because if nothing bad ever happened to Christians, like if you chose to give your life to Jesus and after that, you never got sick, marriage was great, always had plenty of money in the bank, then people choose Jesus because of what Jesus can offer them in this side of life. We don't have an eternal viewpoint of this. We just have the here and now. Mm-hmm. I'm choosing God because God is a genie in a bottle and what he can give me. And I don't want to have to ever go through anything hard. And because I don't ever want to have to go anything hard, I'm choosing Jesus now. And that started all the way back at the very beginning. God had to lay out a plan for them to go, is it me or the world? What do you want? Mm. And because we're selfish, sinful people, and now people might look at that and go, well, I would have chose differently. Would you have? I doubt it. I doubt it because I know that I'm a selfish person and I know that I want to know more and I want to know that I have all the answers and I know that I want what's best. And because I'm self-centered like that I know what I want what's best, then I would have probably made that same poor decision at the very beginning in the garden.
If you had a robot and you programmed the robot and it told you, I love you, Andy. Thanks for making me. How valuable would that I love you be? You had to put it into the system, so you knew it was going to happen. What does it carry verse when your wife, after all these years that you guys have been married and all the ups and downs, and she grabs you and she, in a moment where she really means it, because sometimes we get a little flippant with our I love yous. Sure. But in that moment when you've done something that really touches her heart and she's emotionally moved and she looks you in the face, she says, I love you, honey. Which one's more valuable? Hmm. Let me just ask yourself that. That's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
The earned love. And it's earned why? It's earned through the hard times and the good times and all the different ways that you're choosing to still love you and your wife, being the case. And all those different things, I would imagine, because we're creating God's image, yeah?
Yeah.
So it's like, to me, I think about how much it means to me when someone says they love me and they unpack why. I like that. It feels more valuable than just a flippant, I love you at the end of a phone call, maybe.
Or I love you on the way out the door.
Or any of that.
Yeah.
And then I can't even fathom what a robot telling me it loves me would be, and that's the contrast. It's like an inanimate object doesn't matter, and I programmed it, and now it's telling me the thing I told it to say. Ooh, wow. There's no value in that.
None.
There's value in going through all the things together, and on the other side saying, I still choose you, because that's what love is.
Yeah.
It's a choice.
It is a choice.
So what you're contrasting there is, that's a great one. C.S. Lewis talks about it too.
Come on, see.
Shout out to Mike. C.S. Lewis contrasts it. He says automatrons that's that first book there. Shucks.
Mere Christianity?
Mere Christianity. Yes,
Yeah.
you're exactly right. And he's talking about why God designed us this way. And he goes, he didn't want a bunch of little automatrons. He wants us to actually choose the choice and choose him as our choice.
Yeah.
Because that's what we identify in God's image as the real valuable I love you anyways.
Right.
Is the one that's chosen for us. That's why I like it when my wife unpacks why she loves me so much. And it always has to do with the effort I've put in. And I think it takes effort for us to be in relationship with God too.
Absolutely it does. We don't get to just say, I believe in God and then sit back and do nothing.
I mean, you can. I don't know what that's going to do
but
for you.
I don't believe that you believe in God if you do that.
I don't pretend to know what anybody else thinks.
Well, here's how. Let me just unpack that a little bit.
Sure.
If I go, I'm friends with Jonny, and you go, well, what have you done to show me your friendship? Well, I show up, I come hang out with you, and your truck breaks down, and I'm there for you. We go fishing. We spend time together. We go do things together. When you're having a hard time and you're having a panic attack, you call me because you know I'm there. If I go, I'm friends with Jonny, and then every time you call me, I don't have time for you. I don't show up. We never hang out. I don't put any effort into that. And somebody goes, hey, is Andy your friend? You'll go, no, I mean, I know who he is, but I don't.
Or you might even say we had a friendship. It's kind of fallen off in the last kind of years, and you reflect on it, especially if you haven't been concentrating on it and putting in the effort. If I haven't, let's say for myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a huge piece. That's interesting. I like the autonomatron thing. I'm not a robot. You're not a robot. It means a lot. I think we're made in God's image, so there's something to be said for that.
Yeah.
But we're talking about these various, I guess the things I wanted to unpack were some of these external factors that can affect us. You've brought up the reason why. Now let me bring up some things that can happen.
Yeah.
And the clearest example the Bible gives us is Job. Job 10, 1 through 3. Job has lost his family. He's lost his health. He's lost all of his wealth and resources.
Why? We need to unpack that.
Why don't you unpack that part then?
So at the very beginning of Job, Satan comes to God and was like, hey, there's nobody faithful. And God says, well, have you considered my man Job? He is a faithful man. Mm-hmm. And Satan's basically like, well, we'll see how faithful he is. And
he's only faithful because he's received such great things from you.
He's wealthy and he's got a good family and he's prospering. And so Satan basically just says, take all those things away from him.
God says you can take all those things from him, Satan. Just can't take his life.
Can't take his life.
Right.
And so that's to set up the story of Job. So Satan comes in and just takes his family, takes his wealth, takes everything except his wife, which is kind of an interesting thing. But he leaves his wife, so he doesn't touch her, but takes away everything else.
All of his kids die. All of his resources are gone.
Heard this comedian the other day talk about that and goes, he's losing everything, but he doesn't lose his wife. What kind of woman was that? That he didn't take his wife away in the midst. He just wanted him to go through some hard things, right? But the point is that he took everything away and Job still remained faithful. So that's kind of set up the Job story.
Yeah. So in this moment, Job he's lost everything and he's upset. Because see, you can still be upset. We're not saying you can't have anger. Jesus has anger. Mm-hmm. There's righteous anger, and then there's unrighteous anger. Solomon was talking about unrighteous anger in this week's proverb. Mm-hmm. He was talking about when we've done a bunch of bad stuff, and then we get caught doing all this bad stuff, and then we're angry at God.
Yeah, blame it on somebody else.
Right, as opposed to taking accountability. Job, he wasn't accountable to any of these things. He was called a good man.
Yeah,
and then these things were all happening to him. And in his anger, he's talking to God. And this is what he says, Job 10, 1 through 3. I loathe my very life. Therefore, I will give free rein to my complaint and speak out in the bitterness of my soul. I say to God, do not declare me guilty, but tell me what charges you have against me. Does it please you to oppress me, to spurn the work of your hands while you smile on the plans of the wicked? Again, reflecting that proverb piece, the wicked. Mm-hmm. And Ecclesiastes as well, where it says the wicked can still have stuff here in this existence without that eternal mind. They feel like, hey, I got it all together and everything's great. but we are eternal creatures, and there's going to be a separation. You'll be separated from all the wealth and all the great things here, and you'll go to face God in that second place. And that's why Jesus is so important here. But getting back to this, he's an unguilty man, and he's saying to God, what are the charges you have against me? What have I done that's caused all this loss in my life?
Mm-hmm.
And he's reflecting these major things. He went from being rich to now he's in poverty, which is a feeling of divinely being oppressed. So God is oppressing my wealth. I grew up feeling that way. I grew up very poor. And even in adulthood, I've even in relationship with God, I was like, why'd you start me out so poor? It has to just like always be something that's on my mind, worried about this and that. And it creates in you these fears, this desert mentality where you want to kind of hoard things. I've struggled with that where I have a hard time trusting God with my wealth in whatever form that's come, because I know what it is to be without. And I never want to go back there. So I tend to try to hoard what I have and not be generous.
Yeah.
And like, we know biblically that that's no way to be. In fact, the more generous I am, the more it actually fills that, spot inside of me that it's that spirit spot.
Yeah.
So Job struggles with that piece. He starts questioning God's protection in that. So where were you to protect me from these things? And, if you're someone who's experienced something in your childhood, where somebody hurt you, maybe somebody you trusted, maybe it was a close adult or a close friend of your parents, or it was somebody at the church. But one of these things where somebody hurt you externally, it wasn't you, you were little maybe, and you're hurt by that. And it's like, you can find yourself questioning God's protection. I thought you were the great protector.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say this. I think this is the one area when I was thinking through, I'm never going to question God's sovereignty. But you look at things that happen in this world like child trafficking and child pornography.
Sure.
And that's an easy one for me to get on board and just where you're like, God, that's such an atrocity that happens in this world. Why does that happen? And I know that's a question people have is this,
of course,
if he's this all-loving, all-powerful God, then why does he allow suffering like that to happen? I mean, these are innocent kids that have never done anything to deserve any of that. They haven't made any choices. There's nothing they've done to cause that experience, yet they experience that. And that, yes, there are questions I think that we can ask in this side of heaven that we'll never know the answer to. Why does something
There's
like that
anger
happen?
To be had there too.
Yes.
There's anger towards the action.
Righteous anger to be had towards that.
Yeah, towards the action of it.
Yeah.
Towards the people that would commit it.
Yes.
Again, as we're speaking to at the beginning here, it's, will that thing then control everything from then on forth? Or can you find a way to submit that to God? And that's going to be the question for each one of these. Is at some point in time, is this anger controlling you? What is it taking from you? And do you want freedom? God's offering that. No matter how bad things have been, no matter what's happened in your life, I think God still wants to free you from the anger of that and from whatever it's stealing from you. And the cool thing is God can then shape your life so that you can become an advocate for those things. So where I was falling short in my life in alcohol and drug addiction, I can now go speak to people who have alcohol and drug addictions and speak life into them because God has made me a conqueror of that.
Yeah. I think about that in my wife and I's marriage. So
it's another great example.
We went through marriage struggles for 10 years. I went through a real dark period in my life where my wife and I, we resented each other. Neither one of us was willing to look at the issues that we had going on in our life. We had built our foundation of our relationship on drugs and alcohol, not on Jesus. We had a shift in our life where we were trying to build it on the foundation of Jesus, but we never dealt with the experiences we had with drugs and alcohol being a problem in our lives and the lack of Jesus being there. And so consequently the ownership that I'll take on this is that I didn't lead my family through that period of time. And what ended up happening, it really caused me to think through my own childhood. My parents had a really rough marriage for a lot of years, and they separated for a while, and the word divorce was thrown around. And so there was home was not a safe place for me growing up. My parents have reconciled. Thank God my marriage is reconciled. But I remember holding some serious bitterness towards God. And I had this really, really weird theological view of God. I'm in sales. I'm in 100% commission sales. And so I always had this weird understanding of God. My understanding of God is that if I wasn't obedient, that God wouldn't bless my business. And so here's what was happening in my life. Monday through Saturday, I'm going out drinking and getting drunk. And nothing about my life looked like Jesus throughout the week. But then on Sunday, I've got to show up every Sunday. I've got to serve, and I got to make sure I tithe. Because if I don't do those things, then God won't bless my business. I lived in that terrible theological viewpoint for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And it harbored bitterness towards God in my heart because I was just angry all the time at him. Like, how come I'm doing this so right, but my life looks like this over here? And I blame God for a long time for these poor decisions that I didn't have a growing up that showed me what a marriage would look like, that my wife and I were at odds all the time. And my problem was I was never looking at me going, well, I'm the problem here. I wasn't willing to. It was just easier for me to live on the backside of that on Sunday morning, trying to live my life for God just so my business would stay in a certain mode. But the rest of the week, I wasn't willing to submit my life to God whatsoever. And for me personally, that just caused a lot of anger for a lot of years. What had to happen is I had this twisted view of who God was that had to be untwisted. And the untwisting of that is where I really found freedom in being able to live my life for God, knowing that God isn't up there just like, just waiting to trounce on me every little mistake that I make, because that's just not who God is.
There's a couple of things I heard there. I'm going to reword them and hopefully simplify them, and then you can tell me if I'm right here.
Okay.
But the external factors were mom and dad had a dysfunctional marriage.
Yes.
You then took that and carried that into life, and here's where you become accountable is you maybe, rather than taking their bad example and spinning it and having good example to contrast it, you just kept doing bad things, and then you'd blame those actions that you were taking on God.
Right.
And I think that's kind of the greater picture that I'm trying to paint as well, which is you can have external factors that you didn't participate in happening. So you can have like a loss of a parent or loss of someone that you love when you're young. And you go like, God, there's people in my family, because I haven't cleared this with them, I'm going to let them remain nameless, who've lost parents when they were young. And that's hard.
Well, one of our interviews coming up is going to be with a guy who lost a child.
Sure, there's that. Yes. So any of these things can happen. And it's not like you went about or that individual went about making that happen or participating in that action happening. That's just something that happened, an external thing. But it is about the choices you make thereafter. Mm-hmm. And it's about submitting this pain to God and saying, hey, God, my parents were a terrible example, and now I'm living a terrible example. And at some point in time, you had to hit your knees and go, God, I don't want to live this terrible example anymore. And clearly, the path that I've chosen is a bad path. The way I went about designing this doesn't involve you. And I want to invite you into it. I want you to take over this thing, and I want you to put me on the right path. Mm-hmm. And you've had to continue to make that choice thereafter.
That's the part right there.
Of course.
Continue.
So as you continue to submit your marriage to God, he then takes over and helps shape it. So there's an accountability thing that has to happen and say, yes, these very bad, awful, terrible things happened to me in one form or another that were out of my control, especially if you were a kid. And you might have learned bad things about who God is. You might have terrible examples around you of people that say that they are followers of God, right? There's plenty of that.
That's a big one today.
But at some point in time, what I'd submit is that you have to take ownership over what you can change.
That's it.
About the way that you are going about maybe dealing with this pain or this trauma, and taking action on how you're going to change things in the future, or you're just going to remain that victim And I don't think that's where God wants anyone to be. And I think that it's hard. You know, we heard a podcast, this is year and a half, 2 years ago now. You and I were listening to the same one where a man talked about being, I don't know how verbalized we want to be on this, but he was sexually hurt by
Victor Marks on Sean Ryan's show.
That's exactly the one.
Yeah.
He was sexually hurt by another adult when he was a child. And as he went through life, he just harboring this pain. And finally, when he came into relationship with God in a prayerful moment, and we'll find the episode, maybe we can link it in to hear this, especially this piece, because I know he did it as a separate little 15-minute breakdown of the full episode, which was multiple hours. And he talks about having this conversation with God where he's like, God, where were you when I was a kid and I was being hurt this way? And God goes about revealing to him in his heart and his mind where he was and then asking, would you rather this happen to somebody else? And it's not that it has to happen to somebody else, but he's saying, if I took this away, would you be able to be the man you are today, the tool that I need? And maybe there was part of this that was necessary. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make it right.
It does not.
But it's something that happened that made you the tool that I need you to be. And this guy goes onto massive platforms and inspires other men to break free from the shame and from the prison that kind of experience can leave you in, and help them to see that there is freedom on the other side through a relationship with Christ. And that's really what we're trying to say here is like, there's plenty of reasons to be angry in this world. There's a reason, a new reason every single day. Mm-hmm. But what are you going to do about that? You know, I'm saying that when I had problems that I couldn't fight off anymore, when I submitted them to God, he freed me from them. Now, it took years to learn how to live a different kind of life than the one I was accustomed to. And I'm saying the same thing's probably going to be applicable to any of these things. If you're mad at God, maybe you start with like, where were you? That's what that guy did.
It's a valid question to ask.
It certainly is. But also I would encourage you in that same time, say, I don't want to feel this way anymore. God, I need you.
That's the bigger thing.
I need you to help me get out of this thing. This feeling, it steals all my joy, or it steals all my hope of the future, or whatever it's stealing from you. Only you can know, viewer, listener. You only know. But I'm telling you, if you submit it to God, open your eyes wide, he will start making changes.
He will, and it'll take you from that victim to victor mentality.
To victory mentality.
To victory mentality is asking God the question is, what can I do for you for the kingdom with what I've gone through?
That might be further down the road.
At some stage, that might be the question that you're asking God. But I think you're setting this up for the right question right now is, God, where were you?
That's a fine question to ask, and you can still...
Why did I go through this? What's the purpose of this? What's the fairness of this? Whatever those questions might be, then I don't think any of those questions is off the table for you to be able to ask God.
2 Corinthians 12, 9 and 10. This is Paul having a conversation with God in prayer. And Paul has what's called a thorn in his side. We never find out exactly what that is. He describes it in various letters that he writes. But specifically, he's talking to God in this piece, and he's writing his response to the city of Corinth. And God responds to him when he's kind of opening himself up to God. My grace is sufficient for you, says God. My power is made perfect in weakness. Paul then says, therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why for Christ's sake I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. What does he mean there?
Weakness is, in today's world, we don't like this word weakness because everybody thinks I need to be the hard, strong person. What Paul is talking about is that in my weakness, I'll be strong. It's actually a statement of humility, meaning my weakness is the things that I am going through, the situations that I've been put in, the things that have happened to me in this life that have caused me to think the way I'm thinking. What makes me strong is that I lay them at the feet of Jesus and I surrender them to him, knowing that this side of heaven, I might not have answers those questions. this side of heaven, I might not have healing of those things. And the question becomes, is that okay? And so Paul says, in my weakness, I become strong, is my recognition of that Christ steps in a way and heals me mentally, maybe not physically, but mentally heals me and gives me the strength to continue on for another day. That's the strength that Paul is talking about there. It is a supernatural strength that comes in when I'm in an act of humility, can lay it all at the feet of Jesus. Way easier said than done. Because I know that when...
It's a continuation.
Yeah, because when you're going through something hard, it's easy. We've talked about this in here to become myopic. I'm focusing on this one hard thing that's happened at me in my life, and I can't see anything else around me. And it's easy for me to put people in my life that are going, yeah, you're a victim, stay there. Yeah, you're right to be able to ask those questions. And I never put anybody in my life that go, hey, maybe there's a different way. Maybe God allowed you to go through that because of your strength that's going to allow you to help the next person go through that hard thing that's going through that in their life right now. And maybe our eyes can become open to go, you know what? There is somebody else out there that's going to take my story and what I've gone through and is going to be able to learn from it. And that's the strength that we look for in this. I think that's the position of this whole entire podcast, is us going, these are the hard things that we have gone through, some internal, some external. And when I've gone through the external things, I've had to forgive. That's, I think, a big part of that's going to be the next step for you to take, is there's going to be an act of forgiveness. If there are external things that have happened to you that are making you angry at God, is being able to go back and forgive the people. Not bring them into your life again, but be able to release them of whatever those things are in your life so that you can become whole again this side of heaven. There are a lot of injustices and a lot of unfairnesses that happen in this world. In Habakkuk, this is an Old Testament prophet. What was going on at that point in time, Habakkuk was watching the world around him decay. And what was happening is that people who were doing evil to others were prospering. Sound familiar today? This was happening thousands of years ago on this earth. Mm-hmm. In chapter 1, verse 2, Habakkuk says this. He says, "How long, O Lord, must I cry out for help, but you do not listen, or how long must I cry to you that there's violence, but you do not save?" Chapter 2, God speaks. And several times through this passage, he says, "Woe to him," meaning those who are unjust and have been unfair and gained from it, that in the end, God will make all things right.
That's an eternal mindset.
That's the difference. See, we have on this plane, because we're linear, that we see time from start to finish, and we know that God is outside of time. The Bible says to God, a day is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is a day. So God sits out of time. Mm-hmm. And so our recognition of what's happening, especially when something is painful, is that pain that we feel is drawn out. Like time expands very, very slow when I'm going through something painful. And so when I recognize it, I want God to step in and fix it.
That cannot be understated. Let's do a little visual thing. If your arm is snapped, broken, blood shooting out, how quickly is time probably going if you're waiting for an ambulance to come take you to the hospital?
It takes forever.
Time is going to feel different than if you're doing something you really enjoy. For us, like fishing, a whole afternoon of fishing goes by that quick. That. But that broken arm, while you wait 14 minutes for the closest ambulance to get to you, is going to feel like an eternity.
Mm-hmm. And this is what we need to recognize when it comes to things that are happening, unfairness and injustices. Our desire is that we want God to come in and fix those things right here now. Does he do that? Sure, he does that.
What you're saying is, can he do that? Yes, he can.
Do that? Yes, he can.
Does he do it every time?
No, that's what I'm saying. Maybe there are instances where you can look at where there was an unfairness or injustice.
And it was immediately remedied.
It was immediately resolved. Yeah. But then our expectation is that that's the norm. This is how God works normatively, and that's not the case. Mm-hmm. God's normative way that he works is from a matter of eternity. Is that, yes, in this life you will have hard things, but then he says, "Take heed, I've overcome the world." So in the backside of it, in the eternal perspective, God's going to come back and fix all this and make all things new. In chapter 3 of Habakkuk, we see Habakkuk praising God for his faithfulness in this, is that God is saying, "Woe to them who have done this. Woe to them who are doing this now, because in the end I will prevail." And it's Habakkuk having to recognize that God is here, God is speaking, God will prevail on the end of this. Yes, we live in a hard, fallen, broken world, we do. And our desire for justice is not a reality for what's going to happen because of the evilness that exists in this world. I think people look at the world today and they think that the world is more evil now than it ever has been before, but the only reason why you think that is because we have social media and we have the internet, so we see when something bad happens. I get to see it right now. Whereas thousands of years ago, something bad happened around the world, you would never even know it.
Sure.
In fact, you only knew what happened in your community, and there's probably some horrible things happening in your community, but you didn't know that it was being expounded upon throughout the entire world and other people's communities as well.
You brought up forgiveness, and I think to put a fine point on that is to say, I don't know that forgiveness is always for the person being forgiven. It's frequently most useful for the forgiver. So my example always is I had a friend, James. I had to go to a rehab to stop drinking and taking drugs. I couldn't do it on my own. I had tried many times. And I went to a facility and stayed there for almost a year. And throughout my time there, I developed a friendship with this guy, James. And I admired James. He was physically fit. He helped me actually initially when I first started working out at all. I'd go out and meet him out in the yard because they had an outdoor equipment set we'd work out on. I remember this one time we were playing volleyball. We split off into teams and we're playing. And I was on the other side of James's team. And he was one of those guys that's like overly aggressive when playing sport. You like your character flaws can come out in sport. Like, are you a good sport or are you a bad sport? He was a very bad sport. Unfortunately, it turned out it was more of an indicator of his underlying character. Later, he actually is still in prison to this day. He went back to prison for armed robbery, multiple armed robberies. Anyways, we're playing volleyball and he's being a bad sport. And he's being a bad sport towards me specifically because we were pals. So he's talking smack as we're playing. And I was like, all right. But after a while, I was like, all right, dude, cut it out. Like, just chill out. It's not funny. And it wasn't funny stuff. It wasn't I'm being silly. It was more like aggressive and name-cally. And it just wasn't in his character. It's the first time I'd ever seen this. And I'm towards the end of we're playing and I'm just like, hey man, F you. F me, F you. We get back and forth. I go, you know what? This isn't even worth it. I'm out. Somebody else take my spot. And he's like, oh, and he's calling me out as I'm walking away. Gosh, I was mad. I was so mad. And I wanted to turn around and holler more stuff, and I didn't. And this was a time where I was becoming more and more close to God. So I was spending a lot more time in prayer and a lot more time in trying to understand who God wants me to be. And I went back to my little space at this place, this facility, and was praying about it. And I was upset. And it took hours for God to finally get through to me. Hey, you need to go apologize. Go find him wherever he's at and apologize to him. I was like, what? Apologize to him? He was out of line. I wasn't out of line. He's like, in my heart, it was just, this wasn't words being spoken to me. I didn't hear it audibly from the walls. Just in my heart, it was this, I need to go speak to him. I need to go tell him I'm sorry for the way I reacted. So I went and found him, and he was out by the weightlifting bench. All the lights were on. It was dark by this point in time. And I was like, hey, James. No one else was around. I was like, hey, man, just want to say, sorry I got upset earlier. And he goes, you totally got upset. You're freaking out. What's wrong with you? And I was like, in that moment, I wanted to be like, man, F you right away again. Right. And I resisted that urge. And I was like, yeah, I got a little emotional about that. I don't know why. Maybe I still identify with some of those things. So anyways, I just want to say I was sorry. He's like, yeah, I mean, it's fine. Just, freaking out. I was like, all right.
Didn't reciprocate.
Didn't reciprocate it at all. And I walked back to my little space, and in my heart, like right away, I had this flood of like, that was the right thing.
Yeah.
And I just felt like it was the right thing. And I didn't feel, it was like the moment I turned my back to his, whatever he was doing, whatever he was dealing with, I had said my apology. And I walked away, and I didn't allow any more conflict to transpire because I easily could have got back into it with him. Well, you were. I didn't do any of that.
Right.
I just took accountability for my part, and I walked away. And in my heart, it was like, that was the right thing to do. I got back to my room and I was like, that sucks, God. Like, what is up? And God said in my heart, you didn't do that for him. You did that for me, for you. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, how much do you think I forgive you for all the time? And I was like, how many times do you receive my forgiveness with joy and thank you? Or do you still continue to gripe at me about all this other stuff that you wish you had?
Yeah, forgiveness comes with stipulations. It's not true forgiveness.
There you go. So thank you, Jesus, for giving me that example so early in my relationship, because I've carried that with me. I've said it 1,000 times since then. It was such an important thing for me to understand that forgiveness isn't about me saying to you, you know, I'm sorry for what I did, and then having you then say, well, I'm also sorry for my part. Because that's not always what you're going to get in this world, unfortunately. Not everybody's heart's the same. Not everybody's aligned with God either.
Yeah.
But when you do it, you're relieved of something inside, is what I'm saying. I don't know. I didn't realize that, and I don't think I'd ever experienced it in my life prior to that in any sort of way. I think I'd always would have been like, oh, well, screw you too. And instead of engaging in that, the apology was made.
Probably justified, even.
Sure.
On this plane, like, you know, taking the spiritual side, I probably justified that he started it. He should have been like, he should have reciprocated. And
but that's not, life doesn't work out that way.
That's right.
It never does.
That's right.
And I can't go about expecting that all the time. I can only do my part. Again, that's me taking accountability for my stuff and taking different actions. And that's really going to be the most relevant thing here about this whole series.
Yeah.
Is what can I do today moving forward to change this thing if this thing that happened to me that has me angry is stealing from me? And if you're angry at God, stuff is being stolen from you right now.
Or if you're angry at, I remember my dad growing up. My dad was alcoholic, drug addict. My dad was not around growing up. And I remember multiple times my dad has come to me and been like, son, I'm so sorry for not being there. And I have a choice. I can be like, God, you were just terrible in that, Dad. Or I can forgive and help move on too. And I think there's the other side of that is are there people in your life that have come to you and asked for forgiveness that you aren't willing to forgive?
That's a great point.
Because if you're not willing to forgive them for their shortcomings of what happened, then you're going to hold on to that bitterness and resentment in your heart. And then you're going to have, Bible talks about having a heart of stone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a blockage for the Spirit.
It is.
To be able to work in your life.
It is. And so it's also that other side of forgiveness is you have to be willing to forgive those that have done injustice to you as well. And if you are able to, now again, if somebody comes to you and asks you for forgiveness that has hurt you in a hard way, it doesn't mean you allow them back into your life. It just means is that I'm willing to let that part of my life go so that I can have healing in this side of life and that I can have hope again and that God can use me again. Because as you just said there, perfectly stated, is it's blocking the Holy Spirit's ability to act in my life if I'm just holding on to these atrocities that have happened in life. And there's been some hard things that have happened to people in life. I want to look at this idea of religious anger because I think this is we live in Orlando. We live in one of the most de-churched cities in the country. De-churched meaning that people were at church and left their church for whatever reason. And I think we can look at religious anger. There's this Pew Research study that was done in 2022 that has showed the decline in Christianity. And in 1972, 90% of people claimed to be what would be Christian. In 2020, during a Pew's research study, they found that 64%, with many of them young adults leaving the church. And one of the leading influence was a poor example at home of a parent, meaning that they would claim to be a Christian and they would show up to church on Sunday morning and live one way. And then in the home, they were living a completely different way. And so it was a bad example of a parent inside the home trying to act like they are a representation of God. I remember I had one of my good buddies in high school, his dad was leadership at their church. His dad, and everything people would have looked at would have said, that's a man of God. And then behind closed doors was abusive, angry, physical. In fact, none of their kids are followers, for what I know, are followers of Christ today, because it was such a poor example of this is how Sunday morning kids, don't you talk about how I act behind closed doors, but there was no representation of Jesus whatsoever behind closed doors. And I know a lot of people have anger against the church because of poor parents, or maybe even poor, you brought up at the beginning, maybe it was an injustice that was done to them by a leader within the church, a pastor that was in that church.
Sure.
And unfortunately, what ends up happening is that people hold resentment against the church when it wasn't the church that hurt them. It was people inside the church that hurt them. And so they hold on to anger towards God when that anger actually shouldn't be positioned towards God. It should be positioned towards the people that were unjust to them. And so my call to that is if you're a person that is in that position, that you have gone through some hardship within a church, or a parent who is claiming to be a Christian and is acting in an unloving manner, please understand that that's not a representation of who God is. That there's more to this life, that if you can learn to forgive and move on and actually ask the question of God, who are you? Start to spend time in God's word every day and get to know who he is, the God of the Bible is. I think you'll start to see a different concept of who God is, because that unloving unjustness that you've seen, that's just not a picture of who God is.
Mm-hmm. I love that. You said something in there where you were saying, you know, you'd be angry with the people at the church, but that's not the church, or you're angry at the church. If you're putting your faith in any human, you're going to be sadly disappointed.
Sadly.
No matter what. Every human's imperfect. That's the whole point. That's the only reason Christ came, is because we're so imperfect all the time that we needed a redeemer to help us even get in the doors. Because all of us fall short, is what the Bible says, and it's true. Mm-hmm. I mean, look at your own life. I know mine. I'm constantly falling short. I'm going to fall short within the next 10 minutes of leaving this place,
right,
in one form or another. How does anger manifest? I think is an important thing, because then maybe you can help, because maybe you think, I'm not angry. I certainly thought I wasn't angry. We talked about that in our interview recently too. But it's like with Alec, it's how is anger manifesting? So for me, it was cynicism. Mm-hmm. Just always thinking the negative of things, always projecting the negative of things. Oh, well, you know, bad things happen to me because, you know, I'm just unlucky, or expecting bad, and almost like looking for the bad. Even when good things would happen, complaining my way around a good thing, mm-hmm. you know, which then leads to depression.
Right.
And how can it not? If all you see is negative around you and you're not seeing any of the good and you're not allowing the good, you're going to be depressed. So depression is another symptom of it. Rejection of faith, rejection of God. Mm-hmm. You know, you're going to find yourself pushing back on any of these messages of hope because you've chosen so monofocally to isolate only the negative and focus on that. Mm-hmm. And what we're trying to hopefully help people see is, at the end of the day, bad things can happen to you, right? Just to revisit this again, terrible, awful, horrifying things can happen to you, but we think God wants to free you from that. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter how long you've been stuck in that place of feeling like that bad thing has created the path for you. Submitting it to God, you can certainly ask, God, why did this thing happen to me? And I hate that this thing happened to me. Those are all valid.
Yeah.
But at some point in time, your actions need to be taken, individual that was hurt, to saying, what am I going to do to recapture my life?
Yeah.
What can I do to take steps forward? And it might be trauma counseling.
Yeah.
I mean, that is going to be a big suggestion I'm going to make right now, which is, have you talked to a counselor? And if you talk to one bad counselor, did you just give up on that counselor and say, oh,
Great
that's
point.
it.
Great point.
That person didn't help me, so there's no help to be found there.
Great
It's
point.
like, maybe that wasn't the counselor for you. Maybe there's a different person. If you want to get better, it might take a little while. It maybe won't be one meeting with one person. It might be many years. I mean, we talk about this with alcohol or drug addiction, but it's like however many steps you took into the desert, you have to take that many steps back out. So if you go in with the expectation of saying, God, I want to submit this to you, this thing, this very bad, awful thing, and I need your help to get out of it. Mm-hmm. And with a whatever it takes and however long it takes, kind of, I'm willing to just do that because so much bad has come from this. I don't want it to continue.
Yeah, that's it.
And then try to let God take over. And it'll probably be every single day trying to let God take it back over. And some days you'll have victory and some days you'll have defeat. But as you accumulate time, you'll find more victory than defeat. Right?
I agree. I've seen it play out in my own life.
Of course.
You know, the ups and downs of the Christian life. It's like this, like, yes, you're going to go through some hard things. And
but stepping back, it is
a plane like that.
Always going in the upward trajectory.
Mm-hmm. Because it's shifting my mind from the here and now to the eternal.
Right.
You know, as I think about the church thing too, one of the greatest atrocities I've seen in the church today is the prosperity gospel. It's this idea that, you know, if I put my faith and trust in God, that God's got to give me, that if I just give, then God's got to give back to me. The problem is it's a really bad pyramid scheme where the person at the top gets all the money, and that is the pastor that's promoting that horrific gospel that I think it's crushed so many people when it comes to the church, because their expectation is that if I have just enough faith, or if I give just enough money, if I give just so much my time, then God's got to give back and nothing bad happens to me. That
what is God going to give back? Money or
health,
happiness,
and wealth and happiness, and that God is just going to give me all these things because we have this materialistic view of the world today, and it's not biblical. And so consequently, if you're not taught correctly and you're taught that this is the message of who God is, then when God doesn't show up and give you health and wealth and you go, I must be terrible, I'm a bad Christian, or it's my bad family life, or my bad this, or nothing, to become victim again. And it's designed to keep you in victimhood. Because if I can keep you in victimhood with the prosperity gospel, you're going to keep giving to elevate that what I need to get out of you, and I'm going to suck it out of you, and then consequently I'm going to destroy you in the end. And we see that happen so often in the church today. One of the biggest problems with churches today is church leadership. Pastors not being willing to teach the Bible and the truths of the Bible to people because it doesn't look good from stage, or it doesn't look good on social media, or it doesn't look successful. And the Bible was never set up that way. Bible's set to
It's a lack of humility.
It is a lack of humility.
And transparency and vulnerability from the top down. And yes. I think if that's what you're finding at your church, maybe that's not the right church for you.
It's time to look for a different church. If your pastor doesn't have his Bible open, teaching from the Bible.
Faith involves struggle. It's not guaranteed comfort.
It's not.
It's when you set false expectations for what God is going to be. God doesn't promise any of those things in the Bible, that you will have no struggle. In fact, he promises struggle of many kinds.
Many kinds.
Well, I'm going to go back. I got a quote from C.S. Lewis once again. Shout out to Mike. C.S. Lewis says, I didn't go to religion to make me happy. I always knew a bottle of port would do that. If you want a religion to make you feel really comfortable, I certainly don't recommend Christianity. Jesus wasn't comfortable.
No.
None of his disciples were comfortable. Did they maybe have comfortable moments? Did they maybe have nice and happy and joyful moments?
Of course they did.
I'm sure they did. That's why they kept following. They probably had many great times, but it was a very, very tough life. It was a very tough experience, and they all died probably fairly miserably, but they had an eternal mindset that said, this is just a temporary place I'm going to be in, and some things are going to be awesome, but God's worth it, and what he has is worth it, and I'm going to choose God, and I'm going to submit these hard things to God, and he's going to make me more than a conqueror.
He wants to refine you.
He does.
Because he wants to use you, and he wants to use your story.
Yes.
If you allow him.
Yep. And all the pain can become victory on the other side. As we were saying before, my weakness is made perfect in his strength. God wants to come into that very bad, awful thing, and he wants to empower you to empower others to help them live a better life. But you have to make the choice to submit that hard thing to God and say, God, this very bad, awful thing happened, but I want to trust you. And I want to trust that you have better things for me. And I want to submit this, and I want to pass this anger from me to you. And I want to start having hope again. I want to start having a future again. And God, I'm telling you, we are both examples of this, and we're not special. This can be your story.
Yeah.
You can have the same victory we get to have because of the same Jesus who will come into your story and change things and shift you and make you that sharp tool that will be effective for his mission.
That's it, man.
That's the plan.
That's the hope.
So this next part of the series, part 2, we're going to be talking about healing from anger. We're going to talk about ways you can go about healing from anger, and then we can talk about how you can be supporting others who've been hurt. So that's this next step. It's identifying, God, I've been hurt. Here's the way I've been hurt. Submitting it to God. That's today's episode. God, I can't do this battle alone. You know why you designed me. You know why you created me. Step in. I submit this to you. I give this to you, God. Help me see a new path.
Yeah.
God's going to step in and show you a new path. We're going to talk about how you can go about finding your best version of yourself in that new path on the next episode.
Looking forward to that conversation. Really, our prayer for today is that if you resonate with anything that we've talked about, if you're hurting right now, our constant prayer is that you lay it out to God.
Yeah. If there's something we can be praying for you for, please comment. Or you can email us at updpodcast@gmail.com. And if it's all right with you, right in there, you can share this because we'd love to share your experience too. We'd love to have other people praying for you.
And when we tell you we'll pray for you, we'll pray for you.
Absolutely. It's the prayers for you that there's something that happens in praying for others that prayer can experience through yourself. There's a joy that happens when you're doing that. There's a fulfillment of purpose, and we want to be fulfilled in our purpose. So
Absolutely, we do.
We're so glad that you joined us today. Untrained philosophical discussionists, Andy Lamb, Jonny Hanson. We just want to pray that you have a deep and a fulfilling relationship with Jesus, and that he blesses you all the days of your life.
And all God's people said.
Well, they said amen.
Sure did, buddy. Great conversation, man.
Absolutely.
See you next week.
Later, guys.